Good morning, Judith.
Good morning, Sonya. Just pouring a little coffee into the cup.
Well, welcome to the Coach's Cup.
Yep, welcome.
I'm Sonya Green with SonyaGreenCoaching.com.
And I'm Judith Fender with Judith Fender Coaching.
And if you're listening to us or watching us this morning, we would love for you to give us a review on iTunes. Just go over there and click that 5-star button. And if you're, not that I'm telling you what to do, but
the power of suggestion.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd love to hear some comments too. You know, we know what we love about this podcast, but we'd love to know what you think about the podcast.
We love us.
That's right. That's right. We just do this for fun.
Yep.
But we'd love to do that. So if you could hop on over to iTunes, the Coach's Cup podcast, we would love to have that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Today we get to talk about denying our feelings. And, you know, we talk about feelings a lot, but I think it's because we have in society today, we tend to push our feelings away. We tend to stuff them down. We deny them in all kinds of ways. In fact, I was telling my husband about what we were talking about today, and I said, well, you know, sometimes you want to feel some negative feelings, and he was like, huh? What?
What? And tell us that negative story. What was it?
Yeah. Well, I was talking about, you know, sometimes if you lose somebody, you want to feel sad. And he was like, oh, yeah. And our son came running through the room, screaming at the top of his voice. And he said, I think I'd like to feel lonely. What? Go ahead.
Which is so interesting because so many clients that I have coached before, when they are recognizing, feeling their feelings and doing the work, it's lonely. They realize that they don't really want the food in the kitchen. It's they're buffering the feeling of feeling lonely.
Yeah. And let's stop for just a second and take that word buffering apart, because we talk about buffering all the time and we know what we mean, but I want to make sure that other people know what we mean when we talk about buffering. You want to unpack that a little bit?
Let me unpack my arm here. Okay. So buffering is something that you would do or not do, and it would it has a net negative effect in your life. So, for example, I have lost 80 pounds. So for me, a buffering activity that I do not want to engage in is eating. And that's a super popular one. Many people do it, buffer with eating. So, which is what my client was doing, she was buffering with food. So the net negative would be the weight gain and not dealing with your feelings. That's also a net negative. When we deny ourselves feeling our feelings, we are, in fact, I was reading in a book where she talks about, you know, so we appreciate our vision, we appreciate our hearing, we appreciate the sensation of touch, and these are all this sensation of touch, and these are feelings. But yet we deny ourselves the opportunity to feel lonely, to feel sad, to feel anxiety, these uncomfortable feelings. But
as feel discomfort,
a feel of discomfort, because it's uncomfortable. So it's just super, and it's so cyclical. Sorry, I have like a hair. We're getting it together, Sonya.
I know.
It's cyclical what the human brain will do, and how the process of denying your feelings can just keep you on that spiral of buffering.
Yeah. Some people buffer with alcohol. Some people buffer with shopping. I have known people who have, but seriously, I mean, I've known people who've ended marriages. They've lost their spouse because they could not. That's not true. they did not
Choose.
control, yeah, they didn't
Mhm.
control their shopping habit, and it was a serious thing. And it's all because we're not choosing to feel typically our negative emotions. But some
Exactly.
people aren't in touch with positive emotions either.
Well, I think that it would go hand in hand. If you're denying feeling your
Mhm.
feelings,
Any
then it
strong
right,
feeling.
then you are missing out on the positive feelings
Yeah.
because your brain is basically shut down and in a buffering position.
Yeah. So, it's a process, like most of the things that we talk about, especially um, if you have grown up where you regularly were taught to deny your feelings. And I know for our generation, that seems to be more common, that people were not allowed to exhibit strong emotion. Maybe that's a Southern thing too. I think it is more of a Southern thing, honestly,
Oh yeah.
because you see it. There's a difference. When I lived in Philadelphia, people were much more direct, and I think in the South we're taught to kind of be passive aggressive and keep our feelings under the surface.
Yeah. Interesting, two Southern women
Mm-hmm.
talking about that. And it's interesting how it's at different levels. Like I think I'm a little more progressive, of course. But when you are around deeply Southern women, you can just really see all the niceties and how they are hiding their true selves.
Yeah, yeah. And please, we would love to hear from other women across the country. If you feel like this is something that is common for you, let us know, because we are two Southern women who really don't see outside of that very very much. But I know that we have been taught to push those down a lot of times. I don't want to confuse, though, um, negative emotions with indulgent emotions.
Good point.
So, negative emotions could be discomfort, it could be loneliness, it could be sadness or grief,
Hmm.
disappointment. How does that differ from indulgent emotions?
So an indulgent motion would be one that gets you stuck, right? Like overwhelm, worry, confusion, that you are not
Doubt.
doubt and you're not getting into action.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything that keeps you in second guessing or just kind of on that hamster wheel. I think of as being an indulgent emotion, and they don't produce anything. Our negative emotions are actually part of our process of dealing with life.
Right.
But indulgent emotions usually are not. They don't serve, like you said, they don't serve any purpose. They don't move us forward in any
They
way.
feel important. when
Yes.
when you're in overwhelm or when you're worrying, it feels very true, like like it, what is the word I'm searching for, Sonya? It feels not compelling. Oh, we're both reaching for words today. I can't remember.
The nouns are hard. I
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
know.
More coffee.
Yeah. But one of the reasons, other than this is essential to our well-being, and it really is, feeling all of our feelings
Mhm.
is essential to our well-being as
Mhm.
humans. It's essential if we need to stop buffering with food or alcohol or shopping or porn. Some people do that. That's another thing about buffering. Buffering happens because we want that quick hit of dopamine. So it's usually some kind of false pleasure if we're
Oh,
buffering.
good point. Yep. So true.
So, that's why alcohol, porn, shopping, but with food, a lot of times, when people binge, they binge on junk food. They binge on that high fat, highly processed white flour, sugar. Those are our binge foods because they give us that really quick hit of dopamine.
I'm sorry, I'm going on a visual here of thinking like, yeah, I've never really binged on chicken and broccoli, but
No, no, nobody says, man, I need another apple.
uh, yeah,
Yeah, it's not, it's just not what we binge on.
I may have binged on some cherries though.
Well, yeah, I can
Some
binge
good
on some
cherries.
fruit. I that is true.
Uh,
I can do that sometimes, some grapes.
right.
Um, but in
Yeah.
general, that's why we are buffering because we need that quick hit of dopamine, and a false pleasure is going to provide that,
Hmm.
and it moves us away from processing our feelings.
Right. Right.
So I thought, one of the reasons that we want to feel our negative emotions, and I've had clients who have told me more than one that they are afraid to feel a negative emotion because they're afraid it's going to take them over some kind of cliff, like they're not going to be able to come back from it.
Yeah.
And you were telling about somebody processing sadness the other day.
Right. So I had a client who was in through our discussion, we were talking about feeling our feelings and discomfort, and like her thought process was that if she felt her feelings, if she felt sad, that she, and I'm oversimplifying this, but basically that she wouldn't be able to get up and like pack lunch for her kids type thing, and I was like, was able to coach her through that moment. And I'm like, really? Because here's our point. I think, is this where we're going to bring our point in about like, the negative feelings are coming.
Hmm.
You're gonna want to allow some space for that feeling.
Yeah.
And we like to say, like it gets to ride along. It gets to come in the car. You're going to put it in the passenger seat, say, I see
Buckle
you.
it
Come
in.
on. Yeah, buckle up. And they're coming, and when you include them in your journey, when they're all on the bus, we're going to take turns who gets to ride in the front, and it could be, you could be changing passengers 100 times a day,
Hmm.
or just once or twice a day, just letting them ride along.
Whatever your human experience is. I
Hmm.
mean, there are
Hmm.
days where I feel like I am all over the place.
Hmm.
It's a bunch of kindergartners riding my bus, jumping around. But like you said, other days I'm more even. Eh, for women, some of that can be hormonal.
Right.
You
For
may
sure.
have more of those negative feelings that you process during your cycle. But either way, we want those because we can't know joy without knowing some pain, some disappointment. We can't know love if we don't know grief. There's
Right.
nothing to balance it with.
Mhm.
There's no, if we lived in this perfect place where nothing negative ever happened, then we would never feel all of the positivity either because it would just feel normal.
Right. And so that's where having that contrast, the positive, the negative, and knowing that we get a 50-50 human experience,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
feeling our
And
feelings.
And
Mhm.
knowing that, nobody is going to choose grief or loss.
Right. But denying feeling your grief is prolonging it and actually putting you in a negative space longer than if you would just process the grief, because it's not going to hang around forever if you
Yeah.
allow it.
Yeah.
Just like, so for example, I'm sorry, I hope I'm not taking your point.
No, you go.
We were talking about my anxiety earlier and how once I learned, like I apparently looking back had denied it for about 30 years. Never really allowed myself to feel it.
Yeah.
It I let anxiety prevent me from um, many areas of success I feel like I could have had, but I just couldn't get through the moments of, those breakthrough moments because the anxiety was so intense and I was having panic attacks, that once I learned to include anxiety and bring it along, put it in the passenger seat, it was coming along to the party, all those stories that I thought were just crazy,
Yeah.
um, and embraced it and believed it and allowed it, and that, you know, it is incredible to have to not go through life, through my day, without having anxiety, speaking to people publicly, coaching, and not being in a panic attack. And there are just moments sometimes during my day where I will take a deep breath, and I don't know if that's because I've trained myself. That's part of the breathing process when I was feeling anxiety, to kind of breathe through it. But I will take a deep breath, and I will notice that I will have like a tinge of anxiety in the pit of my stomach, and I'll be like, "Oh, what am I thinking?" And there will be some thought in there that I will be thinking about something coming up, and I'll just say, "Oh, I see you, anxiety.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's just a thought."
Yeah. And that is gold when you get to the point where you can feel the vibration, because that's really all it is.
Mhm, mhm,
You're not going to go over the cliff
mm-mm,
with your emotion.
mm-mm.
You are going to feel it somewhere in your body. We were talking earlier, and I feel a lot of emotions in my face, which I think is a little strange. I don't know where other people feel them, but I get like a burning sensation around my mouth, especially with the negative emotions. I can feel them coming down my nose,
So
across, like
interesting.
under my eyes. Other things I can feel in my chest. But it seems like negative emotions, especially, I feel in my face.
Yeah. It's so interesting. Even as we're talking about this, like, I've worked through anxiety and shame and disappointment. I know what all those feel like.
Mhm.
And I think I've tapped into some joy. Just this is really a new process even for myself, right? I
Yeah.
mean, kind of really just I'm still a baby at processing my feelings.
Yeah. And so we want to before we go today to talk to people about how to process feelings. Now, the first time we started talking about this, I felt like it was a little in the woo.
Yeah, for sure.
I was very suspicious. Yeah,
What have we
what is
done?
this thing? Why would I want to feel that?
I want to hear your story.
Well, I mean, I just remember us talking about it in class when we were in our coaching classes, and talking about processing it and feeling it and naming it, and I was like, that how very strange. It was foreign.
Yeah.
It was a
Yeah.
completely foreign concept. But on the other side of that, I can see
Mhm.
it has changed. Like you said, it's amazing how freeing it is, how much it changes your relationships,
Mhm.
because when you can process a feeling, you can let it go.
Mhm.
It
Mhm.
it will come back sometimes. It depends on the feeling. Some
Mhm.
of them, grief is one, loss is
Mhm.
one, I think, that comes back, of course,
Mhm.
because and the greater the loss,
Right. Right.
the more often it's going to come back, and that's okay.
Mhm.
I mean, because we loved someone so deeply that the loss is going to feel deep. The grief is going to feel deep. And that's okay. But it's not going to take us over the edge. We can honestly sit with it, process it, and then, like you said, move on, bring it along with us. It's
Mhm.
there's no cliff that you fall off of.
Yeah. And so the process.
Yes.
So we're going to name it. We're going to have awareness, right? So for the newbie would be have awareness of your feeling and knowing what you're thinking. And for personally for me, I think if you can just name it
Mhm.
and then ask yourself, why am I feeling this? And then saying, okay, this is anxiety and I'm feeling it because I'm thinking this. Okay, anxiety.
Yeah. And
Come on.
if sometimes, depending on how new you are to this work, you can't even name it
Yeah.
exactly, but you can say, something feels negative or
Right.
not quite right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. If you can just say, I'm having a negative feeling right now.
Mm-hmm.
if you
could be.
can't think of it, don't get caught up in the cycle of trying to name it necessarily.
That is such gold right there, Sonia, because it's like, it's going to be happy or sad. Maybe you
Yeah.
can get on one end or the other. And,
Yeah.
if you
Yeah,
had to
that's
choose.
the starting place.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I say that because I'm still figuring out I have to pull out my little wheel and look at my feelings. I'm like, because feelings are very new to me. Um, it's just like the last 10 years or so that I realized I had more than just happy, sad, and mad.
Yeah. Right.
So,
Yeah.
so
Which is
it
so
takes,
interesting, because when I think again about like how boring life is when we live in that zone,
right.
this zone right here, and not feeling happy and sad, and
Yeah, we really do want that to get that full experience of life. So,
yeah.
name it and stay present with it. That's sometimes difficult because our brain wants to keep us safe and not expend
Mhm.
energy. And feeling a negative feeling especially feels like it's unsafe.
Mhm.
So stay present with it. And I'll do this sometimes. I have to remind myself, okay, I'm processing disappointment. I
Mhm.
am thinking about disappointment and I am focusing on that feeling in my body, wherever it is. So staying present with it long enough to start describing it.
Right.
And I talked about where it is in my body. That's one of the ways. What are some of the other ways that you describe your feelings when you're processing them?
I'm more, I like name it, and I allow it. In a sense, I like breathe it in. There will
Mhm.
be a breath involved,
Breathing is, yeah, you keep saying that, and that is really important.
and just kind of like taking that moment. And I know it's so automatic now, the process I do, that saying it out loud sounds, so I will allow it, and I will name it, and then I will say, I can feel this feeling and carry on through my day. This
Mhm.
is me feeling anxious and showing up for my clients. This is me, you know, and I like it. Just provides some separation.
Mhm.
It takes
Yes.
it away. And as you were talking, my mind even went to like when someone, like many people, not being able to identify their hunger signals, which is another feeling,
Yes.
and that is something um, that I never knew until I sat in hunger
Mhm.
and was like, what? Because I don't know that I was ever afraid of hunger, but going to ruin my metabolism, buying all that stuff. So I was thinking about how hunger is a wave, just like feeling anxiety comes and goes, just like feeling sadness and loneliness, that all these vibrations, chemical reaction from the sentences going on in our brain, causing a vibration, that just allowing ourselves to feel them, in essence, is, I'm thinking of allowing our body to play all the songs,
Mhm.
that if we're skipping the record, if we don't allow the feelings to come through, it just like running the needle for the old timers in here.
Okay. Yeah.
Who knows what a record needle is? You can't do that we can't. I don't know. Can you do that on iTunes? I don't even
I
know.
don't know. We were singing feelings earlier before we started. So let's really talk about how old we are.
Oh, now I just need to belt it out, but I'm not.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, narrating the feeling as it moves through your body. That's
Oh,
what it
good
moves
word.
around.
Yeah, narrating it.
Hmm.
I feel it in my chest, and now I feel it in my stomach.
Yeah. Even when it starts in one place, that's where you usually um will first notice it. It usually will move around. I mean, it is a vibration, so it's moving around.
Mhm.
And I will tell you, you do have to practice this.
Mhm.
So you have to call it up. Like I'll think about a certain feeling and I'll know where I feel it. And when you get really good at processing it, you can call it up. You can say, all right, I'm going to practice feeling disappointment right now. And when you do that, you can decide how big it gets and how small it gets. I think
Mhm.
that's kind of neat too.
Yeah.
Make it bigger. And now, okay. Because if I have control of how big it gets, then I also have control of how small it gets.
I'm so glad you said that because it's reminded me of what it means to take ownership of the feeling. And that's really what I did when I did the work with my anxiety. And until you do it, does any of this make sense? You can intellectually get it, you can hear us talk the words, but
Yeah.
until you begin to put it into practice in your own life, and it's so simple now. It was so hard to embrace, and I really had to lean into lots of coaching to get there.
Yeah.
Um, but to take ownership, and when you own it, you can control it, just like you're saying. And I do that with anxiety. Like when I can recognize the little awakening of it, I acknowledge it, and I'm like, okay, we're moving on.
Yeah.
Don't need that.
Yeah. I mean, you just, watch it go away. It's going to come back someday, and that's
Yeah.
all right. But I do this work a lot in my car because I'm in my car a lot, and so yesterday I was stuck in traffic and I was practicing my negative feeling, which is easy to do in traffic.
Right.
I was feeling a few indulgent emotions too, but I moved on from those. But yeah, if you do have to practice, it's like anything else. If you have spent your whole life stuffing down your feelings or pushing them away, it's going to take some practice to let them come over you.
Yeah, for sure, 100%. And again, for anyone who's interested in losing weight, identifying your hunger signals, I just want to emphasize that all of these are feelings in our body.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
don't deny our vision. We don't deny our hearing, the ability to vibrate. We don't deny touch, but yet we all deny hunger, anxiety,
Yeah.
sadness.
And I want to reinforce the point you said earlier about when you resist it. When
Mm-hmm.
you do resist it, that's when, like, it just,
It
you
feels
know,
unmanageable because you're
yes,
not managing it. You don't own the feeling when you're resisting it.
yes, yes. And that's our inclination.
Yeah.
And that's when we get worried that, well, I can't live with this.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
You end
if
up
if
living
you
with it.
feel it. Yeah. Oh, yeah, you're gonna live with it one way or
Yeah.
another.
Mm-hmm.
So let's live with it in a manageable way.
Yeah. So good. So true. I'm a
All right.
believer. I'm a
Anything
believer.
else?
Ah, nope. It's all
All
good.
right. Well, go out and feel some sadness today, folks.
Allow your anxiety to sit beside you as you.
Allow it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anxiety is one that, I think people have just over the last, I don't know, 5 or 10 years, really started to own. And I think that that's so important because it changes the conversation. It takes some of the shame out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We haven't talked a lot about shame. We could talk a whole episode on shame.
We so
Okay.
should.
It's a popular one, but I love the fact that we are having conversations about anxiety because people have been resisting it for so long, and we all have it.
Yeah.
So
I
own it.
I was having my own thoughts today about if I felt well, here we go, feeling some shame around my parenting and not teaching my kids these skills that words, feelings I have heard my whole life, but I just myself am learning this skill.
Yeah,
So there's that.
I'm putting shame on the calendar.
Shame it is.
Okay.
All right.
All right. We'll see you all next week.
All
Thanks for
right.
joining us.
Woohoo.
Bye bye.
Bye.